So about 20 years ago, I was in the worst storm that the province of Ontario had experienced in 10 years in Canada. And I was in the Boundary Waters. If any of you have been there, it's a wonderful fishing area. There are all these little tiny islands that are there that were created from the Ice Age. So we survived that storm. And I was there with the Boy Scouts. I was a scout leader at that time. And we had to take our tents and we were blowing them in the wind in order for them to dry out. So I'm sitting there. All of a sudden I look up because I hear a noise and I see a Canadian Mountie helicopter coming towards us. And when you're out in the wilderness, you don't normally see those sort of things. And I was like, that's interesting. And then all of a sudden I realized my brother, Paul, was taking the tent and he was throwing it up and down, up and down. And I was thinking, oh no, we're calling the Canadian Mounties to us right now. So sure enough, that helicopter came, swooped around, and then hovered right over us. And it was looking for a place to land. It was looking and looking because if you've ever been out on any of those islands in the Boundary Waters, they're very jagged, they're made out of rocks, but they also have trees on them. And so there were trees in the area and it couldn't really land there. There was another area that was just too cavernous. And it finally found one spot that was relatively flat. And it made this impressive swoop and it landed right there, right next to the lake. So the Canadian Mountie gets out, he comes over to us, and he says, I'm looking for the Girl Scouts. We kind of look at each other and we're like, well, we're not them. Because apparently the Girl Scouts had lost their canoes somewhere during the storm. So one of our adult leaders, his name was Alan. If you think of the movie The City Slickers, do you remember the main character in there? So imagine him, and imagine that he's our leader, and he has a I Love Canada hat on. He has a Go Canadians coffee mug, and he kind of like goes through all the scouts, and he says, hey, we're from the States. We love you guys. Can we get a picture with an authentic Canadian Mountie? And this Canadian Mountie didn't really understand why he was so energetic, but he was like, okay. So we all get a selfie in the middle of the wilderness with a helicopter behind us and a Canadian Mountie kind of looking like he's not sure what's going on. And I still have that picture to this day. So why do I tell this sort of weird story? Well, when we think of spirituality, we usually think in our world of kind of God is sort of this mountain out there, and we have to climb that mountain. But the neat thing about Christianity is he's not just some sort of mountain that's out there dumbly, just sort of like, hey, I'm here, come find me. He's the one, it's actually the mountain gets up and starts looking for us. And we can even think of that God in a very real way is like a helicopter looking for a place to land within our heart. It says that he wants to come to save us. He wants to be a shepherd, as we heard Isaiah speak in our first reading. He wants to tend us. He wants to take care of us. He wants to feed us. He wants to heal our brokenness. But notice what has to come first. The voice that cries out, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight a highway for our God. Let every valley be filled in, and every mountain and hill be made low. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed. Do you see what Isaiah is saying here? He's saying that God is in search of us. He wants to land in our heart. It's not us trying to find him. He's already finding us. But he needs a place to land. And that's why these seasons of Advent and Lent, and they're these kind of privileged times for us to do a deep think into our heart and to say, what are the valleys that need to be filled? What are the mountains that need to be made low? Because by raising up the valleys, by leveling the mountains, then we have a flat place, and that's where the helicopter can land. Or even this airplane that's flying up here. They need a runway. And if there's all trees and stuff like that, it's not going to be able to land. So let's think about, what are those valleys? When we think of a valley, something needs to be added to make it full. So think of indifference. Is there an indifference to God that somehow has creeped into your life? An indifference to prayer? Is God truly the axis around which everything else revolves? Is he the sun in your solar system? Or is he just merely a planet? And maybe there's something else that is the sun. That's the mountains. The valleys are the indifference. They need to be filled with more. The mountains are the idols that need to be leveled. They're the things that get in the way. What is that in your life? Is it materialism? Is it just, I don't have enough time for God? I have to do all these other things. What's going on that is making an obstacle for the Lord to really, really land within your heart? What is getting in the way, that valley, that indifference, that doesn't allow us to cry out, "Here I am, Lord, you called me"? So I'd like just for a moment to share a witness talk by one of our parishioners. His name is Jim. It's about 3 minutes. And it's really a story of how this parishioner, who's been with us just for a little bit of time, has allowed the Lord more and more to clear the landing pad, to experience that deep, deep joy and peace of knowing the Lord. So hopefully this technology will work here.
What does St. Mary's Parish mean to me was the question I was asked. And what does St. Mary's Parish mean to me was the question I was asked. And that's a tough question to answer because my mind is racing with all these different things that just pop into my head. Most important ones I would have to say would be just the welcome community of just genuinely loving people. I've never felt as welcome as I did the first time I walked in the door here. And after struggling with my faith for as long as I did, I didn't really want to come to church until I came here. And now I hear that I'm at church all the time. I guess that's not a bad thing. I would have never thought that I would have the amount of faith and devotion that I have. I absolutely love coming here. And I've been blessed in so many different ways, from being welcomed into the church to being welcomed into the band. Our praise band is absolutely amazing group of people that are just genuine and caring people. And it's like another family inside the family. And everybody seems to get along, and it isn't really cliquey. And I think what really made me realize how blessed I was and am was when COVID actually came to my house, and my sons both had COVID, and we were quarantined for a month. And I have to say that if I didn't have my faith, I would have been a basket case. And that really made me realize that there was an emptiness there that I didn't realize I even had. And now I just feel like everything's going to be okay. And where I used to worry about everything all the time, now I've just kind of learned to have faith and let God handle it. And it's put me at peace on a level that I didn't know was even attainable by me, I guess. The time that my son and I had together, and we couldn't leave, and we couldn't go anywhere, and we were forced to be together, and we ended up becoming way closer than we were before, and in fact, closer than we've ever been. So that was the blessing in a very tough situation. The support that my whole family received from St. Mary's was amazing, from people in the parish to everybody in the praise band. What an amazing group of people. I'm just so blessed to be a part of this family.
So Isaiah says, "Go up unto a high mountain, herald of glad tidings, cry out at the top of your voice. Jerusalem, herald of good news, fear not to cry out and say, here is your God. He comes with power. Like a shepherd, he feeds his flock." What I invite you to do during this time of Advent, I'm going to be doing something called Stories of Hope. As we end this year that has brought so much turmoil, it's important for us to hear those little stars, just like our friend Jim here, how the Lord was very much at work even in such a difficult situation, difficult moment, and allowed the landing pad to be cleared a little more for the Lord's presence to land. What's your story? I know that many of you here have encountered the presence of God in the midst of such a terrible year. You've encountered the healing power of the Lord, the strength. You've grown in your faith in some sort of way. And it's important to be able to share that. If you have a story in some way of how the Lord has walked with you through this year of 2020, and it can be a big thing, it can be a little thing, I invite you to reach out to the parish. Just send an email in to info@stmaryplano.com and just say, I have a story that I'd like to share. And what we can do is we can either work with you to do a little video, to do a little writing, to do something that we can start sharing through social media. And also on these weekend masses, I'd like to be able to take one of those stories and be able to share it with all of us. Because when we hear the stories of our brothers and sisters in the local community, it gives us hope. And it reminds us that even though this is a dark year, God is still the light of the world. Jesus Christ has still come, and he's not going away. And he's going to give us the peace and strength and healing that we need to get through the journey. But we do it together. And through you sharing your story with one another, you can be a conduit of healing. And you can be like Isaiah saying, it's time to clear the landing pad, to let God come. Amen.